Hello everyone, my name is Makeda Voletta, also known as the Body Scientist. And for those of you who don't know, I am a strength and conditioning coach with a background in exercise science and exercise physiology, and I'm also a nutritionist. I am here today to talk to you about nutrition and one topic that's very sensitive, a topic that I kind of was quiet about for a very long time. I did lots of research over years and didn't say anything, and then even after I reached my conclusion on this topic, I still did not say much. Okay, and even though I am a nutritionist and I help people with nutrition, when I would teach workshops and do things, I would really kind of avoid nutrition. And even when asked questions, a lot of times I would kind of dance around things because I knew that most people were associating healthy eating with being a vegetarian or being a vegan. Constantly I would get people that would say, oh my goodness, like your skin shines, or what do you eat? Are you a vegan? Are you a vegetarian? And almost always when I get clients now, they're like, their idea of healthy eating is cutting out red meat, no dairy, maybe no animal foods at all. A lot of people are working on becoming raw food vegans. And I knew some really intelligent people who are vegans and vegetarians. And so I spent a lot of time just like researching. I was like, well, it didn't really make sense to me for whatever reasons. But I said, let me keep looking into these arguments, from a biological standpoint, from a spiritual standpoint, from an epidemiological standpoint, from an anthropological, an archaeological, and historical standpoint. Because there were arguments being made by the vegan community from all those different perspectives. There were people who say that, it's not spiritual. They don't eat meat or they don't eat animals or animal foods for spiritual reasons because they don't want to kill something for their food. But I always found that to be interesting because, plants are living too. And plants are just as much alive as animals are. Plants feel, plants communicate. Plants are, just because we don't see them moving, or because, even though they do move, flowers open, usually when we're not looking at them, you wake up tomorrow morning and the flowers open up even more. Or you see how plants grow towards the sun, how they compete with each other. There are plants that have poisons to make people sick or animals sick to try to eat them. So they defend themselves. So plants definitely communicate, they definitely feel, they definitely hurt, okay? The same way animals do. Also, though, you have animals that will kill you. Like if you just walk through the jungle and walking around whatever terrain, there are animals that will see you and make you into food and will eat you. So a lot of times with indigenous people, they killed animals to protect themselves, but they also killed animals for food. And also for shelter and clothing. Like imagine if you had to find your food, your shelter, and your clothing, okay, from what was around you, and that was it. You didn't have the luxury of going to the store and buying whatever, avocados when you live in New York, and, buying acai berries when you live in Texas, and, stuff like that. You don't have that luxury of going to the supermarket. Before there was slavery and slaves picking cotton and making all this cotton stuff, and you're living in the north, in Canada and North America, and the northern part of North America where it gets cold and there's a winter. How are you going to stay warm in the winter? Just from the plants, from the twigs and wood? I don't think so, Also, looking around the world, and in every continent, all throughout Europe, all throughout Africa, all throughout Asia, all throughout the Americas, all throughout the Polynesian Islands, everybody had drums. And all drums had animal skin. They had part plants from the tree, and they had from the plant kingdom, and animals from the animal kingdom, okay? So you had plants and animals, okay? And those drums were used to call the spirit. In every culture, they had different rhythms, different kinds of drums, but they were all used to call the spirits. So how is that not spiritual? Hunting was considered to be a form of shamanism. There are deities associated with hunting on every continent, okay? There are deities associated with the hunt who are often goddesses, okay? Who are associated with the hunt, and oftentimes those deities also protect the animals and protect the balance in the forest, and are also associated with herbalism. So you have that a lot, and hunting was considered to be a form of shamanism because hunters are standing at the gateway of life and death, the same way midwives do, okay? Now, there were rituals, that were done before a hunt was taken up, and there were rituals done when the food was brought back, when it was brought back to be used for a drum, to be used for food, to be used for teepees and housing and clothing, okay? Before there were ritual, but the same thing is true with the plants. If somebody wanted herbs or somebody wanted a coconut, they didn't just go hack it off the tree, okay? There was also rituals, there was ceremony, they would sing to it, they would ask permission. And then once they got those herbs, they didn't just put it in a capsule and start selling it to people that, oh, you want this and you have this problem, take this herb, and telling everybody to take the same dose. No, that's not how it works. Herbalism, being an herbalist was also a spiritual thing, a spiritual calling, okay? And their shamans would sing to the plants and play the drums with the plants, the rattle for hours sometimes to activate those healing properties. Okay, so it's not enough to say you read some books about herbs and now you're an herbalist and now you're just going to tell people, oh, take this herb and that herb for this. No. Like if you go to Chinatown and you find a Chinese herbalist, they're like 5th and 6th and 7th generation herbalists, okay? So this is a spiritual calling, it's ancestral. All right, so when it comes to hunting and when it comes to dealing with herbs, both in the forest, there are deities associated with both of them, and they're both spiritual. Drums that call the spirits, they have both animal and plant, okay? You're not going to find any group of people anywhere in the world that did not eat some animal foods, who did not hunt some or fish or something, okay? Because it's not just the meat, okay? When people, you know, some of the arguments from vegetarian and vegan community is that we're not meant to digest meat and we weren't meat eaters and blah blah blah. You know, it's actually not true. If you actually do your research and look at archaeological research and the anthropological record and the historical record and the ancient artwork that are in the caves, you see hunting depicted, okay, all over the world from the beginning of time for hundreds of thousands of years, okay? Humans, and when you look at archaeological records, so looking at the bone structures, looking at the content in the bones, you can find out a lot about the diet and the levels of nitrogen and stuff that come from animal proteins. So that's not true. Actually, a lot of humans, most humans were more carnivorous before. Definitely indigenous people, pre-colonial people ate a lot more animal fat, okay? We need fat, and animal fat in particular, to absorb our fat-soluble vitamins, okay? Even to absorb beta-carotene in sweet potatoes and yams, which beta-carotene is not actually vitamin A. It's a precursor to vitamin A. It takes a lot of chemical, biochemical processes to actually turn beta-carotene into vitamin A, with true vitamin A, which is retinol, which sounds like retina, and retina is in our eyes. We need to get the sunlight in our eyes because we have photoreceptor cells in our eyes, okay? The greatest source of vitamin A is in the eyeballs. That's why when, you know, there's stories of Native Americans giving deer eyeballs to Europeans, to colonizers who were in the woods going blind, and they gave them eyeballs. When they saw people with scurvy, it was the adrenal glands, the moose adrenal glands that they would eat, because the adrenal glands is the highest source of vitamin C. We get told about vitamin C in fruits and vegetables, and there is vitamin C in fruits and vegetables, even though it has depleted a lot over the past 30 years, past 50 years really. But the most potent source of vitamin C is actually the adrenal glands. This is why indigenous people ate organs. Liver. Liver is also a very potent source of vitamin A and iron, which is very necessary for women who are pregnant and women who are breastfeeding. Vitamin A we need for our brains, we need for our hormones, we need for our eyes. Same thing with vitamin D. Vitamin A and vitamin D only occur in plant foods. They only occur in animal foods. There is no true vitamin A or vitamin D in plant foods, okay? We need cholesterol to get vitamin D from the sun. So in order to even absorb vitamin D from the sun, we need as much of our skin as possible exposed to the sun on a daily basis. So if you live in a place where there's a winter time, or if you just wear a lot of clothes every day and you're in a car and in your house, in an office, you're not getting enough sun. And even to convert those UV rays to make the conversions to produce vitamin D, you need cholesterol, okay? Vitamin D acts as a hormone. Our brains and our hormones are made from cholesterol and fats. Our brain is mostly made from saturated fat and polyunsaturated fat. Polyunsaturated fats that come from fish, like DHA and EPA, which are only found in fish, are not found in any plant sources, okay? So this is the reason why people all over the world, you look around Asia, all over Europe, all over the Americas, all over Africa, you don't find anybody who just eating plants. I don't care what climate they lived in. But they did eat local foods, and they took from what was around them, and they used the whole animal. Okay, so the level of intelligence that takes, and the connection to nature that takes, I get offended when I hear people, there's certain people who I've known or come across who may call themselves a doctor even, because all the naturopath doctors I've known, have learned from and know some really brilliant naturopath doctors, have read some brilliant books by naturopathic doctors, people who have degrees in naturopathy, doctorates in naturopathy, and none of them that I've ever come across has ever recommended a vegan diet, ever, okay? Animal foods have also been used for optimal health and healing in all continents, okay? The chicken broth and the broths and stuff like that, yes, those are like medicines, okay? Raw milk is another medicinal like food, okay? So that's and the organ meats, you go to a Mexican restaurant, they have beef tongue, they got cow tongue on the menu. I know people who grew up in Haiti who are really strong, some of the strongest people I know, who grew up eating cow brains. It wasn't uncommon for people in the United States, like in the 1800s and the early 1900s, to eat lots of organ meats, okay? I was talking to a friend of mine from Nigeria, and he was talking to me about the insects and how there's sometimes insects in certain African stews, and that's common. So when you go around the world, there's a lot of things people eat. It's rude and offensive to me for people over here who have the luxury of going to the supermarket and buying tofu and soy milk and out-of-season vegetables, okay, and making a vegan burger. Like, why are you making a vegan burger? Why are you trying to imitate meat? That doesn't really make sense. Okay, and also all the raw stuff. Like some foods are better raw. Some foods are better cooked. Some foods are not that edible when they're raw. Some foods are poisonous when they're raw. Okay, so fermenting foods and also using heat but not overcooking something. You don't want to overcook it. It's depending on the food, how you cook it, and cooking it slowly, cooking it at the right temperatures, and not cooking it fully can help release some of the flavor and the nutrients in animal and plant foods, in both, okay? So, there's a lot, so then you're dealing with the spiritual, and then also epidemiological, when people talk about, we're not supposed to eat animal foods. But when you look at epidemiology, you look at the longest living, healthiest people currently on the planet, and all of them eat animal and plant foods. You talk about the Okinawa in Japan, they cook with lard, they eat lots of fish. They eat what's locally around them, but they're not vegans, And the French are some of the healthiest people. They eat tons of heavy cream and butter and stuff like that. They're very healthy. But pre-colonial people, when the Spanish came to Florida, or when they came to the Americas, they talked about the amazing physiques they saw. Same thing when they went to Africa, the amazing physiques they saw and how long people lived. It's not true that we're living longer now than we ever had before. We keep being told that lifespan was shorter. That's not true. If you believe that lifespan was shorter, you need to check archaeological research, because that's not true. We had short lifespans, like when people became colonized, people were living on top of each other in unsanitary conditions, they had short lifespans. But pre-colonial people who were living according to nature, actually, it was very common in every continent for people to live well over 100 years old. To live over 100 years old on average, okay? And still be capable, not crippled and sick, okay? Diabetes was not heard of. Heart disease was not heard of. In I think 1906 or something like that was the first documented heart attack, or 1906 or 1912, something like that. Nobody heard of that in like the 1800s or 1900s, 1700s. The heart attack was unheard of. Cancer, unheard of. Okay? So people started becoming sick when sugar and high levels became introduced to the diet, industrial vegetable oils, tons of wheat and flour. Okay? So when people want to blame eating pork and blaming beef and dairy and animal foods on the levels of diabetes and hypertension and illness that we see, when really, if that were the case, then why didn't people have these diseases in all the hundreds of thousands of years they were eating these foods? Yes, there's a problem with traditional dairy, commercial dairy and commercial beef and commercial pork and commercial chicken and commercial eggs, but the same is true for commercial fruits and vegetables. They're also just as screwed up. They're genetically modified, they're irrigated, they're sprayed up with all kinds of pesticides and herbicides and monocropped, grown in soil that is overworked and sterile, and then shipped all across the world, kept for months before it's put out. So, all commercial food is screwed up across the board. But if you're eating healthy, if you're eating eggs from pasture chickens who are outside running around getting sunlight, eating worms, eating insects, eating grass, being the omnivores that they are. If you're eating pigs who are living on a farm, or like a little small family farm, not a big commercial farm, that's also running around and rooting things and eating some insects, some bugs, some grass, and some coconuts that live in the Caribbean and make them full of lauric acid, different things. You know, chickens and pigs, just like humans, are omnivores. They need animal and plant foods, which means they can eat a variety of a diet. You know, humans eat a lot of different things depending on where they live on the planet. Whereas cows and goats just eat grass. Doesn't matter where on the planet they live, they only eat grass. That's their only diet. So they're a species who only eat one type of plant, and that's it. So their diets don't vary. But omnivores have much more varied diets. And humans are omnivores. We're not carnivores, we're not herbivores. When the vegetarian vegan community wants to compare us, you know, say that our digestive system is too short or whatever they say to digest meat. But it's like when you look at cows who eat grass and herbivores, they have much longer digestive systems, much bigger bellies than we do. When you look at carnivores, it's much shorter. We're someplace in the middle. Our system is not as short as a carnivore, it's not as long as an herbivore. Our teeth are not as flat as an herbivore, but they're not as sharp as a carnivore. It's somewhere in between, okay? Because we're omnivores. We are not carnivores, we're not herbivores. We are omnivores, meaning we eat meats, animal foods, and plants, okay? So this is just part one of me talking about this issue, because there's a lot more to say. I've kind of held on to it for a long time, and it's like, people ultimately can do what they want to do, you know? But I just don't like it when people preach this, like, this factual thing of, we can't digest meat. We're not meant to digest meat. We're not originally meat eaters. That's not true. And I really don't like it when people who are supposed to be health practitioners or whatever, you know, going around trying to make people feel guilty and make them feel like they're savages and uncivilized because they eat meat, okay? Because go around the world and tell people that you think that, you know, about meat eaters, and that you only eat plants. If you go all throughout Asia, you go all throughout Africa, you go all throughout the Polynesian Islands, people look at you like you're out of your mind. That is an American thing, and it comes from a privileged place. And honestly, the studies do not show that they're healthier, okay? Because nothing beats long-term studies over generations. People producing healthy, strong, perfect children over generations, okay? People with perfect eyesight. You know, I used to always say, I could never be a runaway slave of my eyesight. It couldn't be common that so many people had bad eyesight 200 years ago, you know? If you live in the woods and you don't have artificial light, and you need to be able to see and hear everything to get your food, to hear things moving, your eyesight has to be that superb. Most people now, their eyesight sucks. Even 2020, it sucks compared to indigenous people, to Aboriginal people, to the Maasai, to all indigenous people who could see miles away, could see a mile, 2 miles away, seeing things moving. We can't see like that now. So none of us are as strong as pre-colonial people were on all continents, okay? Indigenous people. So I don't believe that we figured out something new that nobody ever figured out before. I'm sorry. That doesn't fly with me. Because if that were the case, people wouldn't be so sick now. Meat eater or not meat eater, people now are not as strong and as healthy as people were, pre-colonial people were, just even a couple hundred years ago. Or even currently now, if you look at groups of people in the world who eat dark meat and meat on the bone and stocks, you know, using beef stock and chicken stock, and eat lots of pork. You go to Korea and Vietnam, the Vietnamese, the Japanese, the Koreans, the Chinese, they all eat tons of pork, okay? The Polynesians in Hawaii. Yes, the Polynesians are sick now, but they've been eating pork and wild boar for thousands of years and they weren't sick. They started getting sick when they started eating imported flour, soybean oil, corn oil, canola oil, Crisco, margarine, and a whole bunch of sugar and soda and crap, okay? So this is part one, and I'll be back to say more. My name is Makeda Voletta. You can find me on Facebook at Makeda Voletta - The Body Scientist. Thank you.